So, I'd like to turn your attention now to a very important case related to Jerusalem. Jerusalem, as we are all aware, needs a little help these days. It has been cut off from the rest of the West Bank. There are increasingly more plans to turn Palestinian districts into Jewish biblical parks. Many Israelis today already consider Jerusalem to be part of Israel. And that's why we believe that this case is so important. It is against a senior Israeli official who is directly responsible for the demolition of homes in East Jerusalem. This is a war crimes case that can be launched in several countries. The goal here is to have this Israeli official arrested for the crimes being committed in East Jerusalem, namely home demolitions in the context of accelerated Jewish settlement in East Jerusalem. As part of this case, we are currently supporting lawyers whose task is to prepare an evidence file on this individual. We have a team of lawyers in the UK and in Palestine who are working to finalize the case. And just so you have an idea of how these things work in broad terms, i.e. the breakdown of the case process, the first step is to complete the file, as I just mentioned. It is then presented to the police and then the state prosecutor. The second step is to seek a criminal investigation. This ideally would lead to arrest, charges, and prosecution. So that's the process in brief, but the significance is clear. If successful, it would resonate massively in Israel as demolitions and settlement building would be shown to be a criminal act. Plus, it would turn the spotlight on Israel's takeover of East Jerusalem and would put the whole project of settlement building at risk. So we believe that this case is definitely one worth supporting. So the flotilla case and the case on Jerusalem is just two of the cases we're supporting, but there's a lot of other exciting work we are doing, and I'd be happy to brief you on a one-on-one basis later if you're interested. I'd like to turn your attention now to some of our previous work, because even though we're a new organization, we've already achieved success. One case we supported was a challenge against the UK government. This is a BBC news story on the case. In this case, we argued that the UK was acting illegally in its relationship with Israel. As part of our evidence, we used the example of the UK's continued arms trade with Israel. This type of legal case is important because it highlights the point that Israel could not get away with what it's doing if it wasn't for the direct or indirect support of the international community. Instead of describing the case in further details, I'd like to share with you a short clip that summarizes the case.
The British government's arms deals and diplomatic relations with Israel have been thrust into the legal limelight this week. Representing a Palestinian NGO, British human rights lawyers made an application on Tuesday at the Royal Courts. They claim British support for Israel is against international law and should be subjected to judicial review.
We say that the UK is in clear breach of international law, and for some time it's had the very clearest of legal duties that it must make. It must render aid and assistance to Israel. It must publicly denounce what's happened. It must do everything it can to ensure respect for Geneva Convention provisions. It must recognise the illegality of what Israel's done.
Last month's attacks on Gaza provoked an outpouring of public support in Britain for Palestinians. A legal aid fund was established to help Gazans seek legal redress for alleged human rights violations. The fund is now financing this case.
We established the Gaza Legal Aid Fund following Israel's recent attack on Gaza. Our objectives are basically to fill a funding gap. There are so many Palestinian victims that have sought legal redress. They have sought legal action, but they haven't been able to finance it, and that's where we come in.
Tuesday's case holds 3 British ministers responsible for refusing to hold Israel accountable. In less than a week, the court could decide if the case will go ahead. The Foreign Office has since responded with a statement saying it has one of the tightest regulations in the world on arms sales and would vigorously defend any proceedings against its ministers.
Every application from Israel or anywhere else is judged against the criteria of whether those arms sales would contribute to internal repression or external aggression. And if there is a risk of that, those sales do not go ahead.
If this case is successful, it could have tremendous implications. First of all, it will send a message to other Western nations who give support to Israel
Thank you. Thank you. So several months after this clip was taken, the claim was judged to be a matter of foreign policy and it was denied. However, the case was nonetheless successful in an indirect way for many reasons. First, it pressured the UK government to admit that British-made weapons were used by the Israelis in Operation Cast Lead. As you saw there, he was denying that. After our case, they admitted it. Second, it pressured the UK government to review all the arms export licenses given to Israel. And third, and most importantly, this concluded in a limited but important embargo on certain weapons components sold to Israel. So this illustrates the point that you don't necessarily have to win a case in order for it to have an impact. So in a nutshell, the fund supported a case that stopped the UK from exporting certain arms to Israel. And this is certainly something to be proud of, and it's something we're studying the possibility of raising a similar case in other jurisdictions like the US. So looking ahead, the fund will be consumed with the flotilla work that I described and the Jerusalem case. Both need support. And if you'd like an update on the progress of these cases, you can sign up on our website, humanrightsfund.org. Over the next 3 years, we intend to file a minimum of 6 to 7 strategic actions across a range of legal avenues and jurisdictions. And this strategy is meant to diversify the legal risk and maximize the potential of success. Because for the movement to have an effect, it has to be done intelligently. In fact, this work, even though it's in its early stages, has already put the Israeli government on guard. For example, Israel has recently pursued a public relations strategy of discrediting human rights-based litigation strategies as lawfare, which they define as a strategy of using or misusing the law. This is clearly not the case, because all we are seeking is an implementation of the law. But the point is, if Israel has nothing to fear from these cases, they surely would not need to engage in such public relation strategy. So just to conclude, because I think I've spoken enough, I hope that I've conveyed the message as to why this work is a strong, intellectual, and strategic response to Israeli aggression, which will reap tangible and long-term results. And if done properly, it will eventually hold Israel and its allies accountable for their violations of Palestinian rights. We must resist using all means possible, but given the political and power realities on the ground, legal resistance may well be the resistance of choice. And moreover, we have a moral imperative. We have a moral duty to provide access to justice for the Palestinians and give them their essential day in court. At the very least, they deserve that. Thank you. Thank you for listening.